At this point in my story, I would like to break from chronology for a moment. Although what I did next was fantastically stupid, it is very closely related to an act of even greater stupidity about 12 months later. So let us jump ahead to the start of July 2004. It was a Friday morning, and I was due to fly to the States early the following Monday. So I thought I'd go to London, see my boyfriend at the time, and go to London Photo Meet on Saturday. I really shouldn't bother making plans, should I? I got to London and spent a most pleasant afternoon with my boyfriend. After that, we met up with some other furs at a pub for the evening and imbibed vast amounts of alcohol together. And, as always the case with these things, one thing leads to another, and we ended up back at his place. I managed to get only a meagre amount of sleep before being startled awake by my boyfriend's landlord, running around in a kilt, shouting something about not being able to find his nipple clamps. It turns out it was London Gay Pride March that morning. Now, although I think the Pride March is more or less a good thing, if nothing else, it's a great excuse for a party, but I'm not particularly the kind of guy who would choose it over a nice relaxing morning in bed. But my boyfriend wanted to go, so I went along too. I was still slightly drunk, getting rather hungover, and very much sleep-deprived, when they decided to give me yet more alcohol. When we got to Hyde Park and met up with the landlord's friends, who apparently decided that bright orange was the way to go this year. Bright orange apparently got the attention of the organisers, and we got roped into standing right at the very front of the march. So there I am, drunk, hungover and sleep-deprived, dressed all in black and surrounded by bright orange drag queens, when Sir Ian McKellen turns up. He was giving me some funny looks because I was wearing a tail. I was giving him some funny looks because, well, he's Magneto. And whilst we were giving each other looks, the Mayor of London wanders up with a large crowd of photographers, which is why, out there somewhere, there were pictures of me, with Gandalf to the left of me, the Mayor of London to the right, and me in the middle with a group of big hairy guys in day-glow orange dresses, with a look on my face that just says, "Why am I here? I should be in bed." We eventually did make it to the fur meet, where we enjoyed several dozen nice, relaxing cocktails. And, come dawn on the Monday, I hastily packed and got to the airport, where I spent many merry hours whilst waiting for my flight, topping up my already high blood alcohol levels to pass the time. On the plane, I was subjected to the usual screaming child that only survived the journey without violence, by making use of the flight's numerous in-flight drinks. So, when I finally arrived in Cleveland Airport, I was drunk, hungover, jet-lagged, sleep-deprived, and thoroughly exhausted from the 8-hour flight. I looked a mess, to say the least, and yet, somehow, against all probability, in the 15 minutes it took to get from the plane to the customs officials, I somehow managed to get some guy's number. When I finally got to the desk, the officer looked over my passport, and I was promptly led to a small, bland room before a brief meeting with two very austere gentlemen who were doing a very good attempt to look like Agent Smith. After a few minutes of awkward silence, they were given a printout which seemed to show all my recorded travel movements for the previous 8 years. Apparently, the Middle Eastern visa in my passport had raised a few eyebrows, but then they asked me the one question I was dreading. Why did you take a one-way flight to Cambodia in 2003? Oh, God. At this point, I should have lied. But I was in no state to think about such things, and they did have guns. So, stupidly, I told them the absolute truth. That I had gone to Cambodia on an absinthe-induced whim because I'd had a dream that a very well-dressed alien had told me to. This is the sort of thing customs officials just don't like to hear. But it's true, and it's why I woke up in mid-2003, looking out of an aeroplane window and seeing, in the distance, Baghdad being bombed, while on my way to Cambodia. 2,000 years ago, Baghdad was the most renowned seat of learning, knowledge and wisdom in the known world. And there I was, in spring 2003, staring out of an aeroplane window, watching it being reduced to rubble on the order of a man who shouldn't even qualify for the rank of village idiots. I think there's a moral there somewhere. But anyway, here's a few interesting facts about Cambodia. It is the country with the highest risk of contracting 5 of the most dangerous and usually fatal tropical illnesses. It's one of the world's highest risk zones of malaria. Thanks to Pol Pot and the Vietnam War, its economy is now unofficially dependent on the organised crime syndicates, and quite officially fucked. It's the most heavily landmined country in the world, and at the time, it was one of the countries at highest risk of SARS. And I was about to face it all with little more than my lucky Indiana Jones-style travelling hat and a beach towel. So, as Baghdad burned outside my window, I did the only sensible thing I could think of at the time. I talked my way into first class, ordered a drink, and watched the in-flight Bond movie. About 15 hours of flying later, I finally arrived in Cambodia's capital city of Phnom Penh. I could neither speak nor read the language. I had no idea what the local currency was even called, had no place to stay, no friends to fall back on in the country, or anything really. But oddly enough, I was feeling pretty good about it all. I was in an almost totally alien city, full of excitement and adventure, and whatever dangers and thrills lay before me. It was time to start gathering some information, so I headed to the nearest bar and got to work. It rapidly turned out that thanks to the local exchange rate, I could easily live like a king on the meagre funds that I had with me, and soon I was checked into a very nice hotel. Before nightfall, I'd made a few phone calls to some of the better-connected quacks and hippies my path had crossed back home, and, to cut a long story short, I had managed to talk my way onto an archaeological expedition from India to uncover one of the unexcavated temples in part of the lost city of Angkor. Though admittedly this was almost totally on the merit that I am quite adept at hitting things with very big knives. But this gave me nearly 2 weeks of time to kill, so I set about exploring the city. Phnom Penh is a very, very odd city, mostly because of Pol Pot and what he did during the 70s. The whole city looks like something very much out of Mad Max. Oxen pull fruit-laden carts, built to millennia-old ancient designs, through dusty streets that run past abandoned modern concrete buildings covered in vines and grime. Street markets are exactly as you'd imagine Asian street markets to be, but louder and hotter and, of course, full of pickpockets. And then, of course, there is the death camp. It was originally, and rather ironically, a high school. In the mid-70s, Pol Pot had turned into a torture camp. Anyone with an education, and anyone related to them or friends with them, was taken to one of these places and tortured for days before being sent off to the mass graves of the killing fields. When the Vietnamese liberated the city, everyone held there was shot, and the place rapidly abandoned. You can still see the bloodstains on the floor, and the photographs hang in each room of how it was found, including one room with a long wall of photos of every person who was sent to the camp and summarily executed. A point which is hammered home shockingly when you see the memorial in the killing fields, shelf upon shelf towering above you of human skulls, hundreds of them recovered from the mass graves. And when you look at them, you know that less than an hour before you were seeing their faces in photographs, each and every one of these people. The atrocities committed there are too many and too ghastly to list here. The soldiers were not ordered to do these abominable things that they did. It wasn't just the mind of one twisted madman, or restricted to one place in the country. It made me realize that somewhere deep down in all of us, we are all capable of unspeakable things. I'm still not sure what to make of that.